two Formula One world-class drivers just publicly turned against the FIA, after one of the most controversial race weekends of the season. George Russell lost a race he was dominating. Lewis Hamilton exploded over the steward decisions. And now, people inside the paddock are starting to ask a question Formula One never wants fans to ask. Can anyone actually predict how the FIA will punish drivers anymore? Because what happened in Canada was not just another messy race weekend. It exposed a problem that could destroy trust between drivers, teams, and the people controlling the sport itself. Russell went from leading comfortably to suddenly losing all power in the middle of a corner. Hamilton watched another FIA controversy unfold right in front of him. Multiple incidents were investigated. Others were ignored completely. And by the end of the race, even Mercedes looked shaken after winning the Grand Prix. That is the part almost nobody is talking about. Mercedes won. And still left Canada looking worried. Kimi Antonelli now has 5 consecutive victories. Russell is already 43 points behind in the championship. Tensions inside Mercedes are exploding. And now the FIA is being accused of creating confusion at the worst possible moment of the season. Because when drivers stop trusting the rules, Formula One becomes dangerous in ways most fans never see. And the deeper you look into what happened after Canada, the worse this story gets. So if you love Formula One stories that reveal what is really happening behind the cameras, subscribe now, because this controversy may have changed the championship forever. Canada was supposed to prove Mercedes had finally solved everything. The car looked fast all weekend. Stable through the chicanes. Aggressive on traction. And for the first time this season, George Russell genuinely looked like a driver ready to take control of the championship fight. He dominated qualifying. Controlled the sprint. Then arrived on the grid Sunday looking almost untouchable. And the scary part for the rest of the field was how easy Mercedes made it look. Russell launched perfectly off the line. Antonelli immediately locked into second place behind him. Within the first lap, the two silver cars were already pulling away from everybody else. Lando Norris could not stay with them. Verstappen started losing time. Even Hamilton, sitting behind in the Ferrari, looked unable to match the Mercedes pace during the opening phase. At that moment, the race looked over. But that was the illusion. Because underneath the dominance, something extremely dangerous was already starting to build inside Mercedes. The battle between Russell and Antonelli did not feel like teammates helping each other win a championship. It felt like two drivers trying to prove who truly owned the team. And that changes the entire psychology of a race. You could hear it in the radio messages. You could see it in the braking zones. Russell defended aggressively into the chicanes. Antonelli attacked constantly with DRS. Neither driver backed down even slightly. And for almost 30 laps, they pushed each other harder than Mercedes probably wanted. Now imagine being Toto Wolff during this moment. Your team has the fastest car on the grid. You are leading comfortably. Everything should feel under control. But instead, your two drivers are fighting each other so aggressively that one mistake could destroy both cars instantly. That is why the cameras kept catching Wolff staring at the telemetry screens looking tense. Because he understood something most fans did not yet realize. This was no longer healthy competition. This was pressure beginning to crack the team from the inside. And then came the first moment that started dividing the paddock. Lap after lap, Russell defended using every centimeter of the track. Antonelli complained over the radio that he was not being left enough space. Mercedes responded by calling it hard but fair racing. But not everybody agreed. Some drivers believed the moves were acceptable. Others thought the FIA should have intervened earlier. And suddenly, a much bigger question started spreading through the garages. Where exactly is the limit now? Because one weekend, aggressive defending gets celebrated. The next weekend, similar moves receive penalties. And drivers were becoming visibly frustrated trying to understand what the FIA actually wanted from them. That uncertainty matters more than people think. Formula One drivers operate almost entirely on instinct. Decisions happen in fractions of a second. There is no time to analyze regulations while entering a corner at 200 miles per hour. Drivers need clarity. They need consistency. And after Canada, many of them felt they had neither. But the real disaster had not even happened yet. Because while everybody focused on the growing tension between Antonelli and Russell, Mercedes were already driving toward the moment that changed the entire race. Then the entire race changed in less than 3 seconds. Lap 30. George Russell entered turn 9 leading the Canadian Grand Prix. He had survived the pressure from Antonelli. He looked calm, controlled, fast enough to win. And then suddenly, the Mercedes died underneath him. No warning on the dashboard. No gradual loss of pace. Everything simply switched off. Russell later described the moment in the most chilling way possible. Everything just turned off. No electronics. No regenerative braking. No power assistance. Nothing. Now imagine driving one of the most advanced racing machines on Earth, and instantly having to wrestle it like a dead piece of metal in the middle of a corner. That is not just a retirement. That is a nightmare scenario for a Formula One driver. And this is where the story becomes much deeper than one mechanical failure. Because the timing could not have been worse. Russell was already emotionally exhausted from fighting Antonelli lap after lap. The FIA controversies were already creating frustration inside the paddock. Mercedes were already under pressure managing two drivers who both believed they should be number one. Then suddenly, the championship contender loses power while leading the race. And the reactions afterward revealed everything. Russell looked devastated walking back through the paddock. Not angry in the normal Formula One way. Something heavier than that. Like a driver realizing the season might already be slipping away from him. He admitted afterward that he felt proud of his weekend because, in his own words, there was almost nothing else he could have done better. Pole position. Sprint victory. Race leader. Fighting perfectly. And still leaving Canada with disaster instead of momentum. But then came the comment that truly shocked Formula One. Russell openly admitted the championship now belonged to Antonelli unless Antonelli somehow lost it himself. That sentence matters more than most fans realize. Drivers almost never say that publicly. Especially this early in a season. Because once a driver mentally removes championship pressure from himself, he becomes unpredictable. Suddenly, every overtake becomes more aggressive. Every strategy gamble becomes easier to take. Every wheel-to-wheel fight becomes more dangerous. Russell basically admitted he now feels he has nothing left to protect. And that should worry everybody around him. But while Russell was trying to process the retirement, another storm was already forming around the FIA. Because after the race, investigations and penalty discussions continued creating confusion across the paddock. Some incidents during the Grand Prix had been reviewed aggressively. Others appeared to escape punishment entirely. And according to multiple reactions after the race, several drivers felt the standards were becoming impossible to understand consistently. That frustration is exactly why Hamilton became such an important voice after Canada. Because Lewis Hamilton has lived through multiple eras of Formula One officiating. He has raced under strict stewarding, loose stewarding, aggressive rule enforcement, and almost total freedom. So when a driver with that much experience starts questioning consistency publicly, people inside the paddock pay attention. And here is where things get uncomfortable for Formula One. The FIA does not only control penalties. It controls trust. Drivers need to know exactly what they can do when defending into a corner. They need confidence that the same move will receive the same judgment every single weekend. Without that trust, drivers stop racing naturally. Some become overly cautious. Others become reckless. And ironically, both situations create more danger. That is why Canada felt different. This was not fans arguing online about steward decisions. This was drivers themselves beginning to sound frustrated with the system behind the sport. And the worst part for Formula One is that the timing could not be more dangerous. Because the 2026 regulations are already pushing drivers and teams to the limit mechanically. Mercedes themselves may have just exposed the biggest hidden weakness of the new era. The suspected issue behind Russell's retirement reportedly involved the MGUK system. That is essentially the part of the power unit responsible for converting electrical energy into usable performance. Under the new regulations, those systems are carrying much heavier electrical loads than before. In simple terms, Formula One cars are becoming more powerful electrically, but also more fragile. Like constantly running a laptop at maximum performance until eventually the entire system overheats. And this changes everything for the rest of the season. Because now Mercedes have two massive problems at the same time. A growing civil war between their drivers. And reliability concerns appearing at the exact moment they finally built the fastest car on the grid. And somehow, the FIA controversy is making both situations even worse. Toto Wolff tried to stay calm after the race. That alone told people how serious the situation had become. Because normally, after a dominant Mercedes victory, Wolff sounds relaxed, confident, sometimes even playful with the media. But after Canada, his tone felt completely different. Controlled, careful, almost defensive. And if you listen closely to what he actually said, you can hear the fear underneath the professionalism. Yes, he praised Antonelli. Yes, he celebrated the victory. But the two subjects he returned to repeatedly were reliability and the fight between his own drivers. That is not accidental. Because internally, Mercedes now faces a nightmare scenario that championship teams hate more than anything else. The car is finally good enough to dominate. but the environment around it is becoming unstable. And Formula One history shows exactly how dangerous that combination can become. Think about it like two heavyweight boxers trapped inside the same locker room. At first, competition pushes both fighters forward. The team becomes stronger, faster, sharper. But eventually, one moment changes the atmosphere. A controversial move. A mechanical failure. A feeling that one driver is receiving better luck, better treatment, or better protection. After that, trust starts disappearing very quickly. And Canada may have been that moment for Mercedes. Because from Russell's perspective, the situation looks brutal. He delivered one of the best weekends of his career. Pole position, sprint victory, race lead, aggressive but controlled defending against the fastest young driver in Formula One. Then his car fails while Antonelli cruises toward another victory. Now add the FIA frustration on top of that. Because several drivers reportedly left Canada feeling they no longer fully understood what would or would not trigger punishment during wheel-to-wheel battles. That uncertainty affects everything. Overtaking decisions, defensive positioning, late braking moves, even driver confidence itself. And here is the hidden problem most casual fans never notice. Formula One drivers do not just race each other. They race expectations. Every driver enters a corner already calculating risk inside his head. How aggressive can I be? Will this move get investigated? Will the other driver back out? What happens if the stewards disagree afterward? That mental hesitation changes racing completely. And when drivers start losing confidence in the consistency of officiating, they begin making emotional decisions instead of instinctive ones. That is where chaos starts. Hamilton understands this better than almost anyone. He has lived through championship battles decided by controversial steward calls. He has experienced races where aggressive driving was rewarded one weekend and punished the next. So when Hamilton joins criticism surrounding FIA consistency, it immediately becomes bigger than normal paddock frustration. Because now the issue carries credibility. And this is where the timing becomes almost catastrophic for Formula One. The sport is entering a completely new technical era. The 2026 regulations already place enormous pressure on teams, drivers, and electrical systems. Mercedes may have the fastest car right now, but Canada exposed how fragile these new machines might actually be under extreme conditions. That matters because pressure creates emotion. Emotion creates mistakes. And mistakes become far more dangerous when nobody feels fully certain about the limits anymore. Now suddenly, every future race weekend carries a different atmosphere. If Russell defends aggressively again, people will compare it to Canada. If another driver receives a penalty for a similar move, controversy explodes immediately. If the FIA stays inconsistent, frustration inside the paddock only grows stronger. And meanwhile, Antonelli keeps winning. That may be the most important detail of all. Because while Formula One debates stewarding, penalties, and internal Mercedes tension, Kimi Antonelli is quietly building something terrifying. Momentum. 5 consecutive victories. A 43-point championship lead. And complete confidence that the fastest car on the grid now belongs to him. But here is the uncomfortable truth nobody inside Mercedes wants to say publicly yet. The stronger Antonelli becomes, the more dangerous George Russell could become too. Because drivers fighting from behind often stop thinking about the championship mathematically. They start racing emotionally. And emotional drivers take risks. Especially when they feel the sport itself is no longer completely fair. That is the exact scenario Formula One desperately wants to avoid heading into the next phase of the season. Because if another controversial FIA decision happens during a direct fight between Russell and Antonelli, this entire situation could explode far beyond Mercedes alone.